big, and I'm not quite sure it's beautiful yet.
Murkowski talks with NPR's Juana Summers about her work on Capitol Hill and her new memoir. Today on All Things Considered. Listen where you are, on your phone, your laptop, or your radio. This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla Faldin.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Russ Murley with your WTJX local forecast. This is Tuesday, the 24th of June. It'll be partly sunny at times today. And looks like temperatures climb into the upper 80s to near 90 this afternoon, which is seasonable. East to southeast winds at 10 to 20. Partly cloudy skies tonight, nighttime low 77 to 81. Partly sunny with isolated showers, 87 to 91 tomorrow. Isolated showers, lows near 80 Wednesday night. Sunshine Thursday, 88 to 92. Rip current risk mostly low to moderate today. Explore personal stories of caregivers alongside their history in American's care system. Coming up on Caregiving at 9 p.m. tonight on WTJX TV, Channel 12.
WTJX 93.1, Charlotte Amalia.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
And good Tuesday morning, and welcome to another edition of Analyze This here on your NPR station in the U.S. Virgin Islands, WTJX FM 93.1 with yours truly, Neville James. Another hazy morning in paradise, but paradise nonetheless. Let's get right to it, man. We got Big Shot here in the studio with us, author Kathleen Dowling joining us. Here, a second appearance on Analyze This. Good morning, Ms. Dowling. Glad to have you in the studio.
Good morning, Neville. Thank you for having me.
Good thing. How you been?
Just fine, thank you.
The first, you got a second book now coming out. When is the actual signing?
The actual signing is this Thursday, June 26th. I'll have an official signing at UVI Medical Simulation Center, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Okay. Who is Kathleen Dowling?
Okay, Kathleen Dowling was born in Frederiksted, and I actually went to elementary school in Christiansted, both Juanita Gardine and Pearl B. Larson. And then I went back to Frederiksted for junior high school at Claudomaco when Claudomaco was 7th and 8th grade, and then graduated from Central High School in 1980. I then went on to take a job at Charles Howard Memorial Hospital, believe it or not. And then 2 years later, in 1982, I went to Washington, attended Strayer College for my court reporting duties, or skills, or studies, I should say. And then I spent 33 years as a court stenographer from the U.S. District Court under Judge Almeric Christian and Judge O'Brien, 1987 to 1990, and then took on a position after Judge O'Brien passed at the legislature from 1991 to 2017 when I retired.
What prompted the stenographer profession?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I was about 18 years old when I got first call for jury duty. And I met a lady there at the court. Her name was Esther Hendricks, married to Tony Hendricks for Hendricks Honda. And she was a stenographer for many years. And I think while you're 18 and you're looking at someone, fingers moving so fast, and you're into the skill of typing, you get fascinated. So I was like totally fascinated just watching her while on jury duty for that 3-month period. Then one day I met her down at the bank, the old Chase Manhattan Bank, and she kind of encouraged me, since I was so interested, go ahead, and she put me in touch with some people, different schools and so forth and so on, and that's what got me started.
So jury duty got you to be
Yeah, interesting, eh? Yes, yes.
Yeah. Talk about Strayer College. Where's Strayer College at?
Well, Strayer had 2 campuses. They had one in Arlington, Virginia, and one in down on 13th Street in Washington, D.C. So sometimes you'll have split classes. Some of your classes will be at the Arlington campus. Some would be at the D.C. campus. So, yeah.
What's the curriculum for stenographers?
Well, we learn sign language. We learn medical terminology, legal terminology, a whole lot of English classes because you're listening, but you're also writing. So you become extremely proficient in grammar and all that type of stuff. You know, we learned a little bit of history. It was a full course curriculum.
How much years it took to be a stenographer?
It's 2 years. It's a 2 year,
a 2 year deal?
2 year deal, yes.
Okay. So you get back home and the U.S. District Court?
Yes.
That's the first job?
Yes, that's my first job as a stenographer because the U.S. District Court had a policy in place. I don't know if it's still there, but 1 stenographer per judge. So at that time, it was just Judge Almeric Christian. He had already took senior status, and then Judge O'Brien came on board. And there was another stenographer, Judith Mazer, that was Judge O'Brien's stenographer, and then she brought me in as a sort of like an apprentice.
Okay.
You know, and then she ended up going to Congress to work, and I end up staying at the court.
What was that like? That learning window there?
Yeah, it was very interesting. You learn a lot. That time, the Superior Court didn't take on a lot of the cases. So basically, most of the local crimes that were committed were actually held at the district court.
Oh, okay.
So, and then remember
But that was the territorial court at the time, wasn't it?
Well, it was downtown Christiansted at Government House.
No, the local court
Yes,
that was
the local court
was the territorial court?
Yes,
It's now the
indeed.
Superior Court, right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And I never worked at the territorial court. And then what happened was we were in that
They were still in the Torah building, or they had done move already?
They were still in the Torah building.
Okay.
We had that crack cocaine epidemic.
Yeah,
so a lot of
that's
cases.
the mid-80s, yeah.
So a lot of cases that I did were, crack cocaine. Of course, you have
Oh,
the
yeah?
murder, the this, the
It
that.
was that bad here in the territory?
Yeah, it was really bad. A lot of, the spin-off from it was mostly burglaries.
Yeah.
And, a lot of stealing and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robbery.
Robbery.
Yeah. Wow. So we were. It wasn't a side thing. It was direct impact.
Yes.
Of the crack cocaine epidemic.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. So that's mid-80s, and then you said in 1991 or thereabouts,
Yes.
Legislature.
Yes.
Okay, and that's the majority of your professional career took place at the legislature.
Yes, I would say about 28 years was at the legislature.
Wow.
And straight through from the 19th legislature to the 32nd. Yes.
You always had a VI history thing, right? That was a personal thing for you. When VI History Month would come up in March, you were always the one who would be putting up the posters and all that stuff, trying to get information about local heroes.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, every year at the legislature, whether it was Black History Month or VI History Month, I did that commemoration. So we would sometimes read profiles of Virgin Islanders from the book, Profiles of Virgin Islanders, onto the intercom system. So it's heard in St. Thomas and St. Croix simultaneously. And then we would put up an exhibit. So people visiting the building would also have the experience of reading about, local Virgin Islands heroes and so forth. And then we expanded it a little further as we went along, because one year I had did a depiction of the Virgin Islands March in living color. So basically, however it goes, I had something to represent that. And that was on the front page of the Avis back then. It was really, really nice.
That's good.
Yeah, so that was the type of thing we did.
No, I know you wrote your first book was on Bordeaux. It was on actually the Emancipation, right?
Yes, a closer look at Emancipation.
Closer look at Emancipation. Okay. Over the years, because I'm gonna bring up something to you for you to look into or to think about. What other heroes have jumped out at you you were overly impressed the more you found out about their contributions to the Virgin Islands?
Well, besides General Bodo, I would think of the Queens for the Fireband. I would also think of the Hamilton Jackson and, Caspar Holstein, Hubert Harrison. Yeah, all of them basically just different spaces, in the contributions.
What do you know about the coal mothers from in St. Thomas?
I didn't study the coal workers too much. I studied a little bit about their strike and lack of compensation or being paid in Mexican dollars as opposed to Danish.
Yeah.
So yes, I was impressed with that too because they were carrying a lot of pounds on their head of coal just to be able to walk up that plank and take the coin and go in and So you would see depictions of that. Very impressive.
I learned about that on this show right here.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I'd heard about it vaguely before. But it was, no pun intended, Donald Cole, who had me to know that the coal workers, their contributions are not to be diminished in any way because it was significant. And then the more you read about it, the more you found out that they were critical in actually the symbolism, the making the argument that proper compensation is a must.
Yes.
So that's important. Now, here's what I found out. As relates to the VI March.
Okay.
Alton Adams, he's the one who, right? He's the one who put the music together. I found out from Melbourne Adams, Captain Melbourne Adams, that Wesley Thomas from out of Fredericksted was actually a key figure in putting the VI March together.
Wow.
Wesley Thomas, Archie Thomas, down in West, right?
Yes.
Wesley Thomas was a genius of a musician.
Yes.
And when it came to arranging, apparently he had served in the armed forces. So he was the one who actually played a critical part in getting the march to where it is from an arrangement standpoint. And then he also influenced a lot of the musicians out of Fredericksted.
Well, it's interesting that you went there because I often hear you talk about Frank Charles.
And that's
Frank Charles, that's my grandfather.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
For real?
My mother is a Charles.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I don't know. We were talking about it up to last night.
Yes.
Yeah. And he played the banjo.
Yes, played the banjo and the drums.
Yeah.
And he also, in his earlier years, played the saxophone.
Okay.
So he played also with Wesley and Archie Thomas. And most of the Quelbe bands around here, I mean, the late now, why is his name slipping me? Eddie.
Eddie Christian.
When I first met Eddie Christian, he told me my grandfather made him his first banjo. Stanley told me that they used to practice in my grandfather's yard. So basically, all the Quelbe musicians would have known Frank Charles. And I often hear you talk about Ranche. Okay, so his grandfather, my grandfather are brothers.
Oh, yeah?
So we're cousins, yes.
Yeah. I didn't know that he was out of Fredericksted as well as Grove. I thought he was Al Grove.
Yes.
But apparently, Frankie Johnson, mother.
Yes.
And Ranche, mother is two sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we're family on the child side.
On the child side,
it's the fathers instead.
Yeah.
You see, yes. His father would call my grandfather uncle.
Yeah, but just talking with the elders, the contributions, the musical contributions in the Virgin Islands. Back in the day, I found out that the Christiansted High School band, I only had one high school at the time.
Yes.
Right? Used to go 45 deep.
Wow. It's a lot of members.
Yeah. So I was fascinated by that. And then I played the trumpets. I wanted to know who the trumpet players was. So Eddie Russell. This is the 60s we're talking about. Eddie Russell. C. Melbourne Adams. Delbert Hewitt. I didn't even know that Del Hewitt, who used to come before the legislature with the tax assessor's office, right?
Assessor.
He, Gleston Sargent. These are the names they call him. And they say the brilliant first trumpet was a guy named James Porter, right? And then apparently there was ladies, Sherry Ann Bradhorse used to play the trombone, and then Sir Vargrave Richards showed me a photo one day. And he said, you know who that is? I said, who? I wouldn't have figured out for nothing. He said that's Deidre Carver.
Oh, wow.
Deidre Carver, who had, she used to play the clarinet.
Okay.
I mean, so that's when that man tell me, like Mickey Lynch, them man, so tell me,
Yes.
look, you believe this band was some small band? It's up 40 members, and they used to dress up.
Yes.
It was a real, a full commitment to style and substance. You know what I'm saying? So, back in the day, well, then again, we had a smaller population. We're talking what, mid 60s. Let me say the population was at about 30,000 and 60, so we probably had 40,000, 45,000. That's why we only had one high school at the time, right?
Yes.
So these are the things that I think, you know, authors like yourself who have this ability to research, put things together, put it in reading form so that the public will have a greater appreciation. And then our libraries will be the biggest beneficiary. Well, ultimately, the people who read it will be the biggest beneficiary, but the libraries as a repository for information like that, I think that's something that we should actually take to the next level.
I agree. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Now, that Wesley Thomas thing really moved me. And then, of course, it's a family of musicians, right, with Archie them and all that stuff, right? And then it had Scipio.
Scipio.
Yeah, he's a great saxophonist, and the list goes on Vibratones and all that. Now you are in the authorship business, right? The first book, A Closer Look at Emancipation. There was something about the emancipation that you felt the public were too. I don't want to say the public itself, but it was too generic. A representation of what transpired. That's the reason why you went the Closer Look road. Why is that?
Yes, I agree with that term, generic. So we had learned a lot about the emancipation, but intellectual curiosity started out for me at first. I'm like, but they have to have more than this. And the conflicting information we had learned over the years also. So I wanted to go closer, look deeper into it. So once the Danish National Archives decided they were going to put the Virgin Islands archival material, or the Danish West Indies at the time, online and download everything for whomsoever could go on and read and check and so forth, I decided to go there. The only thing is that everything is handwritten in Danish. Okay. Some would say modern Danish, some would say Gothic Danish, but it's handwritten in Danish nonetheless. So you come across that page, it's very tedious research, but very intense and very complete. And you're saying to yourself, well, I can't read this. Oh boy. What? So I hired 2 PhDs in Denmark who were able to translate for me from Danish to English.
Okay.
But I had to come up with a system because, of course, you don't want every single page translated. You want who you were interested in the first book would be at Bordeaux, Admiral Martin King, a couple of the others. So wherever I saw their names, because of course the names are written in English, I then reached out to the ladies in Denmark and say, okay, General Bordeaux's name is being mentioned here 6 times in this paragraph, spelled in different ways. Please translate that for me, because obviously they're speaking about him. And then once they started to send the information back to me, we were emailing back and forth. I was fascinated. I'm telling you, I was so fascinated. It's like you get a coffee rush or something, because I was hungry for more. It's like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. So I decided at first I had a small class with just some friends and family, and we used to meet every Sunday up at Canigata Ballpark under the tamarind tree and just discuss the research, I would pass it on to them, and then they would ask me questions, and we would take notes, and we would have a little snacks and so forth, and just talk about it in a small group, maybe 6, 8 of us. And then 1 or 2 of them encouraged me and said, you should put this in a book. And I said, yeah, because I never write a book, but it is such rich information. I wanted the community to be able to have the same information I had based on the research and come to their own conclusion. Another reason why I decided to...
let me stop you right there.
Yes.
We'll take a break, because we're getting into the heart of it, because one of the things I want you to discuss is how the process of actually writing a book, the formatting and all that stuff.
Okay.
We're talking with Kathleen Dowling, She has a second edition with respect to history of the Virgin Islands. This one is Voice Us. And I will take a break. Be back right after this. And we're back here on Liz. We got Kathleen Dowling out to the west and out of Christian State too. Joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Martha. Tell us again the details. You got book signing coming up this week?
Yes, the book signing is this Thursday, June 26th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., UVI Medical Simulation Center, the first building as you drive into the UVI campus on your left.
No, tell us how the first one went.
The first one went really, really extremely great. The room almost wasn't big enough because so many people showed up. It was open to the public, and it was standing room only. As a matter of fact, I was busy into showing the PowerPoint presentation and doing all of that. And when I got out, everybody's telling me, "Oh, people was all outside," and they just milled around until about 10 o'clock at night, just talking about it because I do a book signing along with a PowerPoint presentation. So since UVI has these 3 big screens that you can show, your PowerPoint on, I was able to show a lot of beautiful photos and, right there and actually do a PowerPoint and open for question and answer.
Okay, good. Now talk about the actual reception for the book itself, subsequent to the signing and making your appearances like you do here and Analyze This.
Yes, the reception for the book was also great. Once I was finished with the PowerPoint and the book signing last year, I got contact from so many people. The bookstore in Gallows Bay, Undercover Books, UVI Library, Botanical Gardens Bookstore, and then last year, the Bar Association invited me to be their keynote speaker at their annual meeting.
That went well?
Yeah, it went really well over in St. Thomas. So that was another, really, really grand affair. And, yeah.
Now, have you ever sat down with Judge Harold Willox and talked? Because he's a renowned author here in the Virgin Islands. Matter of fact, I saw him Friday at the Memorial for Edgy. I tell him I got a project I want here I'd like to work on as well, sports related. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I have great admiration for Judge Harold Willox, Justice Harold Willox at this time. And we haven't had an opportunity to sit down, but we did discuss some aspects of my book, and he was present along with some of the other justices, I think all of them, at the Bar Association event. And it was just a fascinating thing. So yes, we did get an opportunity to interact there.
Now let's get back to the Bordeaux, because you probably looked at now like how we look at our history teachers. So we look at social studies when we've been in school and all that stuff. What's that like now, where you're looked at in a different, like you're no longer Kathleen Dowling, Crucian, Virgin Island, you're Kathleen Dowling, author.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because you know me, I'm like, people who know me know I'm just quiet in the corner, don't speak much, don't say much. Well, I mean, my entire profession was just listening, if you want to look at it from that standpoint. So it's sort of like you'd get thrust into the spotlight in some instances, and it's interesting. I'm just humble. I'm humble. I'm just humble. I'm humbled by it, but at the same time, yeah.
Now, the need for multiple books to tell your story. Why?
It is necessary to get to the truth, especially when you're dealing with history. Because now history isn't just history. History is evidence. You could look at it from that perspective. And so the truth is so important. I mean, if your grandchildren were to hear something say negative about you and it wasn't the truth, you wouldn't be, your family who is alive with you right now wouldn't be comfortable to be saying, well, why are you telling Neville grandson that? So the truth was important to me. And because the Danes kept such meticulous records and they wrote every single thing right down to a T, I was even more impressed with the archival material that I was able to look at and, really get to the bottom of our emancipation story.
You ever talk with Edwin Thomas?
No, I haven't.
The Kalaloo man?
The Kalaloo man.
Yeah,
no,
he's a big historian too.
Oh, okay.
Love VI history. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, we got some VI history folks around here who enjoy. You sit down with them and you come to appreciate the knowledge and all that stuff. The Kalaloo man is one of them.
Okay.
So that's good. Now, you're under the Taman tree. Under the Tambran tree, I mean, it's Taman. That's the same. Under the Tambran tree, Tambran.
Yes.
Actually, I was speaking with some folks from who actually they have a program under the Taman tree every third Tuesday of the month in St. Thomas.
I did hear that
they
show.
They were on here, and I told them about Mr. Shrader book.
Mr. Shrader, yes.
Yeah, and all that stuff, right? So let me get that out of the way. We got our own pronunciation on this side.
Yes.
I want to write a book. How do I go about doing that?
Okay, that was my question when they first approached me.
Yeah,
They're like, you should put all of this research in a book.
I'm trying to.
Yes.
I'm trying to get into your brain.
Yes.
As to how you actually went from idea to physical product.
Okay.
Actual product.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have all of this research that you would have done. In my case, I would have done online. I printed everything that I was able to come across. Because for some reason, sometimes you go back on and you didn't mark it, so you can't remember where you found it. And the Danish National Archives is in such a pattern that it has police records in one place, Frederiksted Court in the next place, Christiansted Court in the next place, military records, and so forth and so on. Very sectionalized. So, and then we're dealing with a different language. So I was able to print out as much as I could in terms of whatever I found in English and the translations. So I have all of this document, all of this paper, physical paper, if you will. And I said to myself, okay, I can make a choice here. I can write my own perspective about this research that I have done, or I can give it to the people raw, what I call a first-hand narrative. And I decided, you know what? It's history. It happened already. Let me leave it raw. And then our people are so intelligent, they would come to their own conclusion. They may read a narrative or a section thereof, and they may say, I don't think I believe that. And then others may say, oh, yeah, wow, that's what happened. So I left it to the people's interpretation as they read, as I put it in its raw form, and I tried to follow a sequence so that, it's not all over the place. So they could follow, this happened then, that happened then. When General Bodo was arrested, when Admiral Martin King was arrested, what happened when they brought General Bodo to Christiansted, so forth and so on. And then the biographical information as it related to General Bodo's date of birth, for example, we hadn't had no documentation that would prove to us he was actually born on such and such a day. So I was able to get into the records of the Lutheran Church in Frederiksted and find his baptismal certificate.
Okay.
And with that baptismal certificate, it has March 19th, 1820. So he's not the only one listed on that baptismal, all the babies that would have been baptized. And how you know it's him, they put the mother's name and then the baby's name. So basically, that's how I knew he was born on March 19th, 1820.
1820.
Yes.
Come to think of it, that window that creates some great Virgin Islands. 10 years later, Camille Pizarro was born on St. Thomas. He was born in 1830.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And that March month too, I know.
Well,
including yourself.
you know what time it is.
And my son is the 1st of March. So
you know what it is about the greatness of March. You know what I'm saying? They say the Ides of March, but the greatness of March.
Greatness.
So no, but I'm just talking to you. I'm just thinking. We have some negative history with how the Danes treated our ancestors. That's without question. But there were also some positives under Danish rule, specifically education and construction. A lot of our churches, right, they were constructed during that window, and they're standing up now.
Yes.
The
barracks in Gallows Bay.
Gallows Bay, yeah.
A lot of the buildings that are still standing, it's our ancestors that built them.
Yeah.
That skill.
Yeah.
They had that real impressive skill.
Yeah.
So
so the question is, how much did they learn from the Danes, or was it another time period where they learned this ability to construct that what they constructed lasted so long? I mean,
Yeah, I think they brought those skills with them from Africa.
Okay,
I think that a lot of when we tend to focus on our history, we try to we should go beyond slavery, before slavery.
But would it be skills, or would it be conviction and desire to get a job done?
Both. I think both conviction and desire and skills.
Yeah.
I am
because I learned a lot about this construction thing. I talked with Mario Moorhead. This was I'd say about 14 years ago. He and I used to rap, and he was the one who told me about the Elizabethan and the Victorian, the different styles. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
All that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's interesting that I'm not a genius on that. Some talk show hosts like to give people the impression they know everything. I don't. I try to learn and retain as we go. But I am impressed. Like as an English church, right? My mother, and of course they need some reconstruction every so often, refurbishing. But these our main churches, those 4 different religions, those 4 main religions, and you mentioned Lutheran.
Yes.
Which is our state church at one point, right?
Yes, the Danish West Indies State Church was the Lutheran.
Lutheran Church, right? So you got Lutheran, Catholic, Moravian, and Anglican. Them 4, right? Those were the foundational churches. And then subsequent to that, we've had our Seventh-day Adventists. You've had the Pentecostal churches, the Baptist churches, all that stuff. But those 4, right? You can actually see Virgin Islands history in the way those churches were constructed in Christiansted and Frederiksted.
Agree.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Now, so you're evolving as an author. Now, Voice Us. Talk about the distinction from focusing on the emancipation and getting into Voice Us? What are you trying to, as you evolve, what are you trying to do here?
Oh, okay. Well, Voice Us still deals with the emancipation because the subtitle says the 1848 executed 8. So initially we thought it was 17 men that had got executed as a result of their participation in emancipation. But in going further into the research, I found where they pardoned 9 and executed 8. So these were those 8 that I'm saying with that title, Voice Us. They also wanted to be their testimony to be put out. The Danish court system at the time allowed for testimony from just about everyone. The enslaved population, the Danish officials, the authorities, the police officers, everyone that was on the scene for emancipation got an opportunity to put out a statement or give testimony. So these 8 men who were executed, they also gave testimony. This testimony is included.
They were executed because of their roles in the emancipation, in the fireburn?
In the emancipation.
In the emancipation.
Right. And how they came to that
No, the
determination.
fireburn is 1878.
Fireburn is 1878.
But they had fireburn involved. They had fire involved in emancipation as well?
Not necessarily so. Our emancipation, proudly enough, was almost bloodless. The reason for that is because none of the enslaved population or the whites got killed in Frederickstead. Now, Christianstead was a different story. By 10 p.m. that night of July 3rd, when Christianstead enslaved population learned about it, they gathered together from, all North Side and St. John and La Grande Princess and all over, and they was coming into town. One trigger happy, I would call him, Danish officials opened fire on them by Bassin Triangle. Another shooting took place by Beeston Hill. Another small event took place by Anna's Hope. So the next book is on Christianstead events, by the way. I'm doing a 3-part series.
No, but I'm glad you're talking this talk because we've had this misinformation over the years that nothing of significance happened in Christianstead.
Christianstead had the bloodshed.
Okay.
And so we shouldn't do the separation between Christianstead and Frederickstead in no instance.
Well, I know the deal was caught in Christianstead.
Yes, or we shouldn't
when
do...
Bonho and Van Schulten had that critical meeting that actually impacted timeline and all that stuff. That happened in Christianstead.
Yes, there are those who don't believe that Bodo and Van Schulten had a pact, PACT, but they did.
They did.
Because Van Schulten wrote, where you find with the, what we would say...
They kind of deal with for 1849, right?
Yes.
And it got accelerated to 1848.
1848. Yeah. And then the King of Denmark at the time didn't want to have no longer slaves in his possession. So Van Schulten and Bodo met, and they had this pact. And their agreement that they met about, Van Schulten wrote to his childhood friend, where you find a lot of the truth when officials like that they put it in a memoir or a personal letter or something. So in the first book, I have a letter that Van Schulten wrote to Maria Eide, who was his friend from in Denmark, but she was living in St. Thomas at the time. And he says there, me and Bodo had a pact, and the agreement of the pact was, I would not open fire on the enslaved population when they gather in Frederickstead, and he promised me that no white people would get killed. And Bodo kept his part of the pact. Van Schulten did too, because the fort commander, Castaneer in Frederickstead, did not open the cannons on the 8,000 slaves that were enslaved population that was gathered in Frederickstead. And
who you said was the one that protected Bodo when they came from Frederickstead?
Major Gillick.
Major Gillick.
Yeah,
That's
Major
right,
Gillick protected him, put him under protective custody in what they consider to be the firehouse, the Grand Corps, and then took him home with him just to protect him from,
because if you had stayed there, the likelihood of him being alive.
Anything could have happened.
And
then they arrested him from Major Gillick's house in Stony Ground and brought him to Christianstead until December.
Well, we're talking with Kathleen Dowling, the second book in what it looks like it's going to be, and what we hope it's going to be, a long series of educational history here. Voice Us will be officially available this week?
Yes,
This
Thursday.
week? Thursday. And that's the 26th.
26.
26th, right? And at the Simulation Center down here at UVI. This is what time in the afternoon?
5:30 to 7:30.
5:30 to 7:30. Okay, we'll take a break, come back and talk some more about voice loss. Be back right after this. Who you be? Good morning once again. We're joined by Dwayne Henry, who came into the studio. Put on some headphones there, man. And gained a conversation with the superstar author that we have here in the studio, Kathleen Dowling. Voice Us. This is edition 2 of her catalog. That's the right way to say it, right? Right, her library.
Yes.
Right. So we're good. Quickly, before we get into details, again, going back to that question, how you format a book? You determine up front how many chapters you want, blah, blah, blah. Let's start break that down for those who may aspire to write going forward.
Yes. Thank you once again. You determine upfront how many chapters you want. You determine if you want the book to be small, you want it to be big, the font size, what audience you're catering to. In my case, since it's history, I always think of the elders who may have a problem with, eyes and so on. So you want the print to be big, so they don't have trouble reading. Researched material in the way I have done these books is you put it in such a way that it flows, that it follows a sequence. If you're doing narratives in this section, you'll do all the narratives in that section. If you're doing places in another section, you'll do all the places in another section. So you basically put it in a manner that it's easy read, but at the same time maintain authenticity and interest and all that kind of stuff.
You also got photos in the book, right?
Oh, this book has 21 chapters, and every chapter begins with a photo. And the photo is a photo of the plantations on St. Croix from the 1800s. So I have Mary's Fancy, Rustop Twist, East and West, Hams Bay, LaGrange, beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous island of St. Croix. I mean, all the Virgin Islands is gorgeous, but if you see how they laid out the plantations and the estates, and some are sketches and some are actual photos, but let me tell you, when you see them on that big screen that I gonna show, it's gonna blow your mind just how beautiful St. Croix actually was and still is.
Do you want to gain on this?
Yeah, well, I was this is on schedule. Good morning, everyone. But I wanted to come and back up Kathleen, of course. And before I ask a quick question, I want to say, UVA, are you listening to this show? We're talking visiting lecture series, maybe, or something permanent. But Department of Education, this is what cultural education looks like.
No.
You're listening to it now.
You were at the first book signing. That's how I know about it. You came by extra spot afterward. You had how that went from a perspective of someone who was attending.
Listen, it was packed. And as you know, I left there extremely excited. And I said, I got to show this picture of Bodo to Neville. You know? And I came straight to Exit Spot to look for you and was showing and a bunch of other men too. And they were like, I say, you've never seen a picture of Bodo anywhere except in Kathleen Dowling book.
Yeah.
You know, that's the level of intricate research that this young lady has done in this book, and for all the people that have done research on the emancipation before, nothing comes close to what you have produced, honestly.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned the plantations, so there's a geography component to this as well. The 9 quarters, you familiar with that?
Yes.
Break that down for the public, because on St. Croix, we have certain estates that carry the same name in different parts of the island, right? Concordia, Mount Pleasant, all that stuff. And so people may have been confused as to why you got Concordia and then outside there by country there, why you got Concordia down in west across from Estate Wim and all that stuff. And it's because we had 9 quarters and all that. That's part of it, if not all of it. Talk a little bit about that geography component that you learn processing, researching your information.
Yes, in the first book, A Closer Look at Emancipation, I actually list the 9 quarters of St. Croix, how they separated or made each plantation roughly about 150 acres or so, and then went ahead and still divided them into quarters. So Queen's Quarter, Prince Quarter, King's Quarter, and so forth. Western Quarter, Northside Quarter, and then you also had an A and B in some of the quarters. So it's very, very interesting. In this book, the photographs have to do with the actual plantations itself. For example, when you see Constitution Hill, you would think you're looking at that stretch going into the university because there's palms on both sides of the street.
And Constitution Hill.
Yes, and they called it Palm Avenue at Constitution Hill. And when I first got that photograph from the Royal Danish Library, it said Palm Avenue, Constitution Hill, St. Thomas. And I go, oh, hold a minute. This Constitution Hill is on St. Croix. So, I had to kind of let them know, no, this is St. Croix for sure. So there is water flowing, for example, one with water flowing, you can tell, by Castle Burke. Because there was the Mint Gut, there's an area there close by it called Mint. And there's the Mint Gut going across there, and you could actually physically see in the photograph that there's a stream of water going through there. So it's fascinating. It's beautiful.
Now, last night, I was by 2+2, and we were going through the situation with Captain Blair, right? And the seaplane, right? They had the incident here.
Yes.
And that's why it's important to get things correct. They actually have the flight for that particular incident being from St. Croix to St. Thomas, when in fact it was from St. Thomas to St. Croix.
Correct.
You check what I'm saying? So when I was reading the details and all that stuff, I had to actually mentally, make that adjustment, because the incident happened on St. Croix, right out here, right? So they had make it seem like it happened in St. Thomas. So that's the next thing. That's the reason why it's important to get things factually correct. You're talking about Constitution Hill.
Yes.
We know Constitution Hill to be the Anna's Hope area, the eastern side of St. Croix, right? Good. Now, Voice Us. What are you hoping to accomplish from a reception standpoint with Voice Us, as opposed to, or not necessarily as opposed, a little bit more different, because you're now going into a more in-depth perspective about the emancipation. What makes it different from the closer look as we look at Voice Us?
Okay, a closer look was very biographical, while at the same time some testimony, narratives from the Danish officials, so forth and so on, personal letters of Van Schulten and a couple of others and so forth, a chapter on Anna Hegard and so on. Voice Us, 1848, executed 8. This book has much more testimony from the enslaved population. I'm talking about General Bodo's friends, his comrades, more from Admiral Martin King, Admiral Martin King's wife. There is a very interesting perspective in this book also, when General Bodo and Major Gillick is going to about 20 or 21 plantations on the north side of Frederiksted and on the south side of Frederiksted, so Camparico, Wim, Carlton, and so forth. General Bodo was confiscating the guns, confiscating the weapons from the plantation owners. Him and his friends were just going from plantation to plantation, confiscating those weapons and turning them in, arresting members of the enslaved population also. This was crucial because they didn't want, those weapons to be used against the former enslaved. So this was just major. From maybe the Tuesday, the emancipation was a Monday, so from maybe the Tuesday to the Friday, all he did was confiscate weapons.
Wow.
and prevented plundering. And at one point, he's making a statement in this book saying, we didn't come to touch and steal. We came for freedom. This is what all we want. We can go back to our folk songs like Clear the Road, Are You Clear the Road? We don't want a bloodshed, not a drop of bloodshed. These words in these songs weren't just words. These words were actual events, actual things that took place. Meaningful. So there was no bloodshed at all. No bloodshed at all. I want to emphasize that. There was no bloodshed surrounding our emancipation in Frederiksted. Christianstead, about 10 p.m. that night, people got shot. But it wasn't something Van Schulten sanctioned. It was, like I said, a trigger. Happy McCutcheon, Adam McCutcheon, who was just maybe scared of seeing so many enslaved coming into town at the same time. He just kind of opened fire.
I just writing down all these names.
Yes. This is crucial. This is very, very crucial.
Bodho, Major Gillick, Admiral Martin, Governor Van Schulten.
Yeah.
McCutcheon, you said?
Yeah, Adam McCutcheon. He's the one that fired on the enslaved population in Christianstead. Newspaper articles is also included in this new book. We had headline news being made about our emancipation in Barbados, St. Lucia, as far away as New York. New York Herald wrote a story on August 1st, 1848. I have the entire articles in here. London, London Standard, Trinidad and Tobago. All these places wrote about our emancipation in a positive light, being impressed with the lack of bloodshed. Because remember, April of that same year, Martinique had their emancipation and it was extremely bloody. So they saw us as like an outstanding example. How did they pull that off without, I say it was...
I ain't really trying to be... No, because, the incidents happened in Christianstead, but our behavior was more civilized.
Exactly. Extremely more civilized. And they respected General Bodo to such an
nonviolent.
extent.
Nonviolent,
yes. Admiral Martin King and General Bodo, based on the research, hadn't met until after the emancipation or the day of. So what General Bodo did on the western part of the island and south, Admiral Martin King would have done from Bagavalin come up to Christianstead, basically preventing plundering and looting and this type of
and for
thing.
those who don't know, Bagavalin, that's St. George's, that area there, right?
Yes, up on the hill.
Diamond Road, right? Diamond Road, come up the road, come down, right?
Walbagard and there's a Hope, and then there is Bagavalin. Just you go from Mountain Gas Station
Mountain
straight
Gas
up
Station,
that side. Yes.
Felix
Yes.
Peterson area.
Yeah.
So that's where Admiral Martin King and his family lived. Yes. So there's a lot of intriguing information. I think that once you start to read Voice Us, the 1848 Executed 8, you're just going to be like just taking it all in, because it's just such a interesting thing. And I was happy to find those pictures, also happy to find the newspaper articles in particular, because you always want to see what the outside world thought about you. And also the enslaved population were mostly voiceless. But here in the Danish West Indies at the time, we were allowed to voice, which is amazing. It was rarely done anyplace else. Haiti had their revolution. Well, of course, the Haitians won, so there was no need for court trials. But there was Jamaica, Taki Revolution, there was revolutions all across the Caribbean. But the enslaved population, they get no testimony. They don't want to hear from them. But here, they allowed it. It is amazing. They allowed them to speak. And that's fascinating to me. I needed to see those court records.
You got so many options that you could go into. What's the third? What do you think the third edition of the Kathleen Dowling Chronicles is going to be like?
Well, the third book I plan to do would be on Christian set events and also the women's role in emancipation.
Okay.
This would be in one volume, but women played a greater role than just bringing the cane trash from the different estates and piling them up just in case we need to burn in Frederickstead. So women were caretakers. They influenced certain actions. There was a lot that the women did that I want to highlight in the next volume, and also look at all the events that took place in Christian set. Because when they arrested people, as far as La Grande Princess, they were bringing them to Frederickstead. Oh, they were part of that whole group in Frederickstead that got arrested also. So yeah, it's a complete thing.
When you
I just wanted to say that that's good to know about the Christian study involvement. All my good friends down in Frederickstead, I hope they're paying attention.
that's why I told her.
Yeah,
earlier,
because we were part of it too.
This misinformation, but they ain't had nothing.
That
of,
everything
of
happened in
significance.
Frederickstead.
Yeah.
And only Frederickstead stood up.
I had to back them up and let them know.
Thank you very much.
Our boy fans, Gerard Hall.
Yeah.
Right. Morning fans. When you first started, did you imagine that it would take multiple books or multiple editions in your storytelling to tell the whole story, to make it comprehensive?
No, I didn't.
You thought you could do it in one?
Just one book, and then it's done. But when you get into the archives and you start to do the research, there is so many sections. There's so much. It's like hundreds of thousands of pages. Maybe millions, I don't know.
Wow.
But it's from floor to... I even have a picture here of the Danish National Archives, how they have our information stored from floor to roof.
Wow.
It's so much,
Very voluminous.
Very voluminous.
You got it.
And it's fascinating stuff.
I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you, Dwayne Henry, for setting this up. Ms. Kathleen Dowling. Voice Us is the second edition of her... I'll use the right word. I don't think storytelling... even though it's appropriate, there's probably another term that we could use, but we'll hold on to that for now. With respect to the significance of the 1848 emancipation here in the Virgin Islands, continued success in your authorship role.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And success on Thursday
Yes.
with the book signing. I'm looking forward to talking with you when you get that third edition out. Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Thanks
and thanks
for
a lot,
having
Dwayne.
me.
Appreciate that.
course.
You got it.
Okay.
We'll take a break. Be back. Michelle Smith will be joining us here in the studio as well. Be back right after this.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters. The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
And we're back here on Analyze This. Thank you very much, Ms. Kathleen Dowling, for making some time. And don't forget the book signing takes place at the Simulation Center on Thursday, 5:30. Okay, when you come into the main entrance at the Albert Sheen campus here on St. Croix at the University of Virgin Islands, first left, can't miss it. That's one of our thing them from back in the day as well, Dr. Hall, when they had the controversy with the medical school and for St. Thomas and the Simulation Center for St. Croix. Yeah, man, it's what it is. Simulation Center happens, so we appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? So can't miss it. And you know me, right? The history major and geography buff and all that stuff this time, but this type of thing are good for me. So I'm with this. You know, so Voice Us is the name of the book, okay? And this has to do with the execution of the 8, right? It was 17 originally, but 9, right, were pardoned, right? So I do enjoy it. And I got my copy, so I'm gonna enjoy the reading and all that stuff. Yeah, man. So we focus on Kathleen today. I didn't get a chance to ask her through, you know, okay, yeah. You first stumbled on, send me a text. You said to send me the picture, send me the whole picture. Okay, I'm gonna set that up for you. Look out for that there in a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I didn't get to ask her what about this, the current conflict that's going on over there, and you know, with Iran and Israel, and what happened yesterday was, yesterday evening, late afternoon evening, President Trump announced a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Right now, I'm for the most part skeptical of a lot of things that he says, because, you know, he's into reality TV and all that stuff. He just says things and, you know, what have you. So I didn't know what to believe. Then we heard that it was actually true. There was some agreement. Some were saying it's not true and all that stuff. And then overnight, which would have been early 40 morning, they were back at it again. And it goes back to what Ronnie Russell said one time when he on the table talk. You know, because, you know, we don't, you know, one of the things about the table talk, you know, we don't look at things that are in a Virgin Islands vacuum, right? We want to look at how things, you know, in the outside world could potentially impact us here locally, right? And clearly what happens in the Middle East definitely impacts us here in the Virgin Islands, because it is no secret that the Middle East population, you know, they own a lot of the gas stations and a lot of the supermarkets. Those are necessities anywhere in the world, not just in the Virgin Islands, right? And, you know, so, you know, we got to keep an eye on that, because the last thing we would want, you know, is for that raw emotion, you know, to spill over here into the territory. Because as Kathleen Dowling just articulated, for the most part, we are a civilized people, historically, right? So that's the reason why, you know, on the table talk, you know, we are not averse from talking about things outside the territory, notwithstanding the fact that we're a local talk show, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, when I heard that yesterday, and then, you know, come to find out this morning, you know, what Ronnie Russell said, you know, 2-3 years ago, he's right. You know, that's war, that's perpetual war, man. Conflict in perpetuity. That's what's going on there. That's why a lot of Americans, irrespective of their political affiliation, wants nothing to do with war in the Middle East. Because It's too much blood have been shed for there to ever be a real forgiveness and pardoning and ceasefire and all that stuff and letting bygones be bygones. Innocent people being slaughtered. It's not good. I used to watch Hardball with Chris Matthews back in the late 90s on MSNBC. And he took a trip to Palestine. Back then we had suicide bombers, beautiful young girls. It was shocking to me. I was in my mid-30s then, early to mid-30s. And Chris Matthews said when he speak with them, their thinking was, if I'm going to die like a dog, then I might as well go out how I want to go out. And the word that he used was hopelessness. This sense of hopelessness is what was fueling their desire to take their lives and take people with them. In a sense, we don't know how good we have it here on this side of the world. When you got to go into shelters because you hear bombings taking place, or sheltering in like what happened on October 7th when they ambushed people in Israel. And I still find that whole situation on October 7th hard to believe, given how it's been globally accepted that Israel got some of the best intel ever created that they didn't know. And of course, we heard subsequent to that Egypt had told Israel something is in the works. Check out yourself. And that's why you have this polarization, where even though Israel was attacked, people still believe that Netanyahu knew about it and in some instances wants this conflict so that he can do what he wants to do, with respect to Gaza. They said the number now is 56,000 in 20 months. Well, a little bit more than 20 months. Because this is the latter part of June. And the incident happened on October 7, 2023. 56,000 people. Not to mention the physical carnage. And we can't relate to that. I'm just being candid. We don't live like that. When we hear of what happened in St. John over the weekend and what happened in Grove over here over the weekend, them thing that frighten us. And that is a speck. Numerically. It's the same thing with respect to loss of life. Don't get me wrong. But from a numerical standpoint, you know what 56,000 lives be in, what's 20 months? 600 days? 56,000 divided into 600 days. Let me do that in my head. If the number was 60,000 in 600 days, that would be 1,000 a day. Or 100 a day? 100 a day? Yeah, 100 a day. That's 600 times 100 is 60,000. Yeah. So we're looking at 85, 90 people a day on average losing their lives in Gaza. That's inhumane. Inhuman, whichever one is applicable. That's why I like to read. That's why I like to listen to what people say, and then I parse out what makes sense and all that stuff. And you hear Donald Cole and myself, Doug Cole, Alan. We like to reference what Malik El Hajj. This is El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, right? Malcolm Little, known as Malcolm X, said, with respect to the civil rights movement. He said, this ain't just a civil rights thing. This is a human rights thing. This ain't got to do with color, man. You don't do this type of thing to people, irrespective of color. White, brown, black, Native American, the folks on the Pacific Rim, down under, the Latino community, folks in Greenland, you don't treat people like that. This is crazy what's going on now. I grew up in Paradise, right? I call the Virgin Islands Paradise, right? We actually got a state paradise, but I didn't grow up in Paradise. Everyone's saying farm, right? But I grew up in this American paradise. I could have never imagined growing up here that this is what we would come to. Locally, regionally, nationally, internationally. How the loss of life is so, it's okay. Nah, man, it ain't okay. That's right. Yeah, I ain't with that. And see, the greatness of my audience. Good morning, Ms. Delabank. Say, Claude McKay poem, if we must die, let it not be like dogs. You heard that? Yeah, man. Yeah, this is wild, man. This is wild. And I can't support that, man. It's irrational behavior. I ain't buying into that, man. And it's an educational thing. Check. You heard that? Go ahead, Marie Molina. Excellent text. She said, read the number of people killed to date to help visualize it. 56K is more than the total population of either St. Croix or St. Thomas. It should be St. Thomas, St. John. Horrifying. And she's absolutely correct. At our apex, we were good for 110,000. Maybe 115. And 56 times 2 is 112. Right there in the middle. Just think about that, man. And in this case, I people might get offended by how I say this, and I say this. I was talking to the boss yesterday, right? I got a problem, right? Right. And I said Trump got elected when he was 70, right? 8 years ago, in November of 2016. Biden got elected when he was 78. In 2020. Trump got elected for a second time this past fall when he was 78. Really? Is this the best America has to offer? That folks who have all these old wars and these old, vendettas, that's who gonna lead us? And this is across the board. Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever. Really? And people say, well, age shouldn't be held against them. Yeah. Yeah, because, people got lives to live. And once you get to your 40s and you get to 50, you're on the backside. I'm just being candid. And this thing is crazy. America was torn apart with the Vietnamese War. Had a man named Cassius Clay, arguably the greatest athlete that ever lived, threw away his career, or the prime of his career, by saying, why should I go over there? Just because Joe Louis did it in World War II, that means I got to do it in Vietnam? He said, no, I'm not doing it. I ain't got no problem with them. They didn't do me nothing. And there was a a half of the population who said he was a traitor, turned his back on America. And then there was another half that said, we with you. You're right. Get our children them out of there. People, babies, going and playing. Yesterday when Malcolm De Castro sent me that text message, and he said, we were talking about malaria and all that stuff and the impact of the being exposed to that. You know? This is rough, man. Rough, and we'll do better. We're dealing with an energy crisis here in the Virgin Islands for a generation now, over 20 years. And what happened and what's going on in the Middle East now? That ain't going to help our situation. It's going to further extend this energy crisis. So you're probably saying, well, what are they talking about? What's going on in Iran and all that stuff? How that impacting we over here on this side of the world? Really? If you understand global economics, right, and the fact that we don't manufacture anymore, even when we used to manufacture it in our backyard, we weren't getting any financial benefit from manufacturing the commodity that we need, you know, to fuel our infrastructure to generate energy in the Virgin Islands. That's the reason why we talk about these topics, because it's impacting us, you know. And I'm not going to be a talk show host and just ignore it in the name of it's a local talk show. No, sir. You know, we got to figure things out here, man. Go check, and I'm concerned, you know, because it all cycles back to education, and you know, we need to be more educated as a people, more knowledgeable of what's going on around us, and it's rough, man. And this thing ain't some politics. You know, just let me just say something, because I know my blind believers, my blind supporters are going to follow me regardless of what I say. That's abuse. You know, so I ain't with that, man. I can't support that. Never will. So hopefully, you know, cooler heads could prevail. And, you know, if there's a minimum age for being eligible to run for public office, there should be a cap too. That's what I believe. 35 to 70. Once you get to 70, you're disqualified. That's how I look at it. You check. Just, you know, looking at it differently. I mean, don't get me wrong. Knowledge is knowledge, and what you know, and you're gonna know it once you get your faculties. But to me, if you got a minimum, then we need a maximum too, in the name of fairness. Okay, so we'll take a break. Michelle Smith gonna be joining us in the studio. Looking forward to talking with the student athlete at the University of Georgia, and we'll be back right after this. And we're back here and analyze this, and we're going to one of my favorite things that we're going to talk sports here. Analyze this. We got Miss Michelle Smith and the producers here in the studio. Pull the microphone them up. Mom and Dad here in the studio. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning to you, Neville, and good morning to the listening audience.
Coach, introduce yourself.
My name is Keith A. Smith Sr. I'm the coach of Michelle since she was 4 to a certain age, and then I'm also the president of the VI Track and Field Federation.
Pull the microphone up so you can be more comfortable. That way you don't have to lean down. Okay, there we go.
And I'm also the president of St. Croix Track Club that assists with producing a lot of the events on St. Croix.
Okay. Morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Mireille Sankatsing Smith, and I'm Michelle's mom. I'm also the general secretary for the Track and Field Federation.
Okay, good. Young lady?
Hello, I'm Michelle Smith, a VI Sport Ambassador and, I guess, runner.
Pull the microphone up a little bit closer. Good to see you again here in the studio.
Yes.
Everything good?
Yes.
No, I'm going to get right to the bad part first, and then we could have some fun after that. Michelle Smith, you've been going to these track and field events, and you've been dominating the early rounds, and then in the finals, you ain't delivering the goods. What happened, man? Huh? What going on, man? You point too much in the heats and the semifinals, and then when the finals come, you're tired or what going on?
It's just they don't match up the fast people with fast people in the prelims. So, like, when you see the finals, you're like, oh, where did this person come from? But it was just winning the heat before me or something.
Yeah, but I see you dominating the heats and the semifinals, and then I ain't seen the medals in the last part, and that'll be a painful deal for me. Now, is it about conserving energy during the heats and the semifinals? Are you experiencing any kind of has that happened with you in the past?
No, not really.
I mean, you dominate Carifta and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong, but when you went to the under 16, it was World Under 16 or under 18. It won in South America. In South America.
World Under 20.
It was the World Under 20.
Yeah.
Right. You won the heat. You won the semifinals.
Yeah, that race was just a skill issue. I didn't.
A skill issue.
Yeah.
No, break that down.
Skill issue on my part. I didn't run my race. I was like too focused with what was going on around me, and then I just like messed up my race.
Oh, okay. See, I like that candor. So you could have won the race. In your heart, you believe you could have won the race.
I could have done a lot better.
You could have done better had you done something technical. It was a technical thing for the most part.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Coach, what was your take on that?
Well, I looked at the length of the season, and I thought that that was one of her longest seasons in her life, because she did cross country the year before, and then it went right into indoor track, outdoor track, and then international track. But like she said, when you get to that level, any little mistake done is is highlighted huge in the finals. You have to, really be on your game psychologically and be able to focus on what you need to do. And that is something that we try to teach all our athletes to understand, that the psychological focus of a race is more important in a lot of cases than how hard you practice or how hard you actually run. You have to be psychologically ready. And sometimes before a meet, a week before the meet, I'm prepping my athletes psychologically so that they can go out there and be prepared mentally to perform. That is a bigger part. I have a quote, and it's, athletics is about 85% mental. Put your mind and your heart in it, your body will follow. And I truly believe that.
Mommy, what's it like watching your daughter win heats, win semifinals, going to finals with a lot of anticipation, and then it doesn't work out?
So when that happens, I mean, it's you feel disappointed, but then think of how Michelle will feel. So you have to be there for her, because everybody wants to win, And then especially if you feel that you're the favorite and leading up to the final, you've been doing so great. And then that happens because of a technicality, like, like how you prepared for your race and then it doesn't happen. I mean, really, like, whatever I feel, I have to put that aside to be there for Michelle and to comfort her. Because, I mean, there's, like, people are always there to celebrate with you.
Yeah.
But when things don't go right, then everybody, like, distance themselves and all of that. And then you're there by yourself, then you feel even worse. So we really had to be there for Michelle. And
now, how did you handle that? The letdown?
Well,
Disappointment?
yeah, disappointment for like a couple hours, and then I was like, okay.
But you're still young, though. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't beat up on myself so much, but there is a learning curve. For example, right? Like I was a Michael Johnson fan, right? And I would see him. He had this ability where he could carry his speed from 200 to 400.
Correct.
So the 400 was the first event, and then the 200 would come after the 400, and then I would see him in the heats and in the semifinals, coming around the bend for the 200, and he looking at wrong, right? Looking at wrong because he wanted to know how much I could shut it down because I want to conserve as much energy, and then he ran the 1932, right? In Atlanta, right? Is that something you're teaching her as well?
Not exactly. Yes and no. See, the hurdles are a lot more technical than that, and you have a certain amount of steps between each hurdle. So therefore, you can shut it down at certain instances. And
Well, it would be in a stretch. You're not going to shut it down until you're clear that you come around.
So she's learning, basically how to do that, because remember, one of our problems here is that we don't necessarily run on the international level as much as some people, or have high level competitions. So we are not always managing our energies through the rounds as well. And so therefore that's something that you learn as you grow. And at 18 years old, when she went to Colombia, Cali, Colombia, that was still young in her process. And now on the NCAA stage, she's with huge competition on a regular basis, and so therefore it bodes well for her to learn that process versus when you're before college and you're in high school and you're just blowing everybody out all the time. Getting to that level where now that you have competition all the time is excellent, because now when we look at the NCAA championships, she went in there ranked number 4 or 5, and she came out number 3, and so therefore you can see the progression of learning and growth in her athletic maturity.
I used to coach basketball, so I like to listen to coaches' perspectives and all that stuff. Right, going into the Olympics last year, Frano, you met him yet? Steve Francis, the coach for Jamaica, the one who coached all the sprinters.
Met him many a times.
Okay, he was interviewed before the Olympics, right? Of course, Kishan. That's him, Kishan Thompson, right? He had run the fastest time, right?
Correct.
Going in, and I love listening to Coach Francis, right? Because first of all, he's very deliberate when he talks, which is a beautiful thing. A lot of people who talk real fast, they're trying to hide something. When you stop and you listen to someone who is deliberate, they want you to hear all the words. So they ask him, it was a good half-hour interview, what's your expectations? Right? So he's coaching one of the favorites now, right? Yes. And he said, well, that Jamaican twang, right? This is his first competition. So hoping that he medal. He didn't say win, You know what I'm saying? Basically, he's saying, I want him to learn as we go. He said, if he win, well, that's a beautiful thing. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. But there's something about learning as you go that is so valuable. It's an intangible that you really can't teach, right? Now, this Kishan was blowing through people left and right, but Coach Francis had an understanding that at the highest levels, it's not just about physical ability.
That is correct.
There's an intensity, and a lot of people just can't handle when the lights are at the brightest, what's the fella name? The one from Jamaica, who was the number one from Jamaica before Usain?
Asafa Powell.
Right? Asafa is one of the fastest ever.
But
and then when the big tournament, when the global, the world championships come around, we named BT. Tyson Gay beat him.
Yeah, but keep in mind that one of the Asafa Powell's issues, as we look at it, was he wasn't running the 2 and the 4 as much. And in order to go through the rounds for the 100, you have to be able to run, a little longer, because you can,
it's high speed. The speed that you're being asked to run.
The intensity for 2 and 3 times is not in his repertoire. If he had an event where he can just run 1 time, nobody could beat him.
Oh, you're talking about going through the rounds?
That is correct.
Okay,
That's
okay.
Asafa Powell's.
Okay, yeah. To me, I just think that when the lights were on at the highest, where he just didn't perform. There are people like that. There are athletes like that they're real good playing inter-neighborhood basketball, but when it's territorially, sometimes they can't handle the light. Now that we get that out of the way, let me talk about the dominance of Michelle Smith and the University of Georgia this year. Are you really embarrassed? People cheering a couple weekends ago in Eugene, right? It was in Eugene.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like going in as the favorites and then actually winning even beyond expectations?
It was like really heartwarming to like see all the seniors who work for that and being able to like say, oh, I helped contribute to this success. And then also just like, hey, we won. We beat all these big schools who like didn't see us coming, or I guess they did, but like they were expecting to win because
who was the defending champ?
I don't know.
That's
Arkansas.
Arkansas,
right?
Arkansas.
I mean, you know.
I don't pay attention.
You got to know who the champ them be, so that when they're watching with that side eye.
Nah, I just mean mug everybody.
You go let them know there are new sheriffs in town. You know what I'm saying? You ran the third leg or the second leg? Second leg. 4x4. Right, and I win the goal.
Yeah.
Who the anchor? Aaliyah Butler.
Yeah.
What she do to that girl? She should have been arrested for it. She had that girl thinking that she won the race, and then when they come into the stretch, she just fly across her like that.
Yeah, that was nice.
You know what I'm saying? What was the reception back? Have you gotten back on campus? School already finished?
Yeah.
Okay, so there wasn't this big reception in Athens. Matter of fact, what's it like? What's Athens like?
Athens is nice. It's a little quiet, but it's like
a rural community.
Yeah.
Out in the countryside.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's like a good amount of stuff to do, and then more stuff if you have a car.
You mentioned the seniors and the upper class women, right? They embraced you upon coming to the University of Georgia. They showed you love as soon as you got there, or they were like, she thinks this is easy.
Oh no! Everyone that came out when we came back, they were very supportive. They were like congratulating us and stuff. It was like some of our seniors, like pro athletes, coming in, and some.
No,
of
I'm
the
talking
other
when you
sports.
first got on campus last year.
Last year
in August when you
when
come
I
on
was
campus.
a freshman.
When you're yeah.
Oh no! Everyone was super nice. They're very inviting, very inclusive. They're like, oh, let's do like these little get-togethers, like getting to know each other and stuff.
What about a young lady from the BVA? She goes to Georgia as well?
Yes.
What's her name again?
Adeja Hodge.
Adeja. And she's a sprinter. She's 100 and 200.
Yeah.
How'd she make out this year? How'd she do this year?
I think she adjusted well. Everyone's just like super like I don't know. They're nice. I don't know the other word. But like she hasn't started competing, but everyone was just like she trains I don't know. But like everyone just like supports her.
You think she's going to take that next step as a sophomore?
Next step
in terms of her performances as a sophomore coming up this year.
Yeah.
You're looking forward to seeing her?
I am.
Yeah.
I think that, to interject, I think that she might have redshirted this past year. So therefore, she will still be a freshman next year.
Okay. So she'll be a sophomore educationally, but athletically she'll be a freshman.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what I believe.
Okay. Now, how is VI track and field in general?
VI track and field is growing. We had Olympic they run yesterday, where we had athletes coming out from about 5 different federations. You want to name them, Ms. Smith?
Yeah, sure. Track and field, and then triathlon, swimming, cycling, and who was the fifth one? Judo, volleyball, beach volleyball. Well, volleyball.
So beach volleyball,
yeah.
track and field,
Yeah.
cycling, judo, and swimming.
Yeah.
Swimming. Okay. And that went well.
That went excellent. We had about 55 participants out there, and it really commemorates the whole Olympic movement all around the world at the same time. The day before, we had the Eunice Bedminster.
Yeah. How did the Eunice Bedminster
National Championships went awesome. It went great.
That was located where? St. Croix, St. Thomas?
St. Croix this year at the educational complex.
Okay.
And we had participants from St. Thomas. We had some senior athletes, that Malik Smith, Michelle Malik, Michaela, Omar Simpson, Rachel Conhoff. Those are senior athletes came out there, and the younger athletes were able to see them compete with them, and so it was awesome experience for everyone involved, and it was a great way to end the local track and field season. As we move on, we are looking to take the top athletes to Germany for the World University Games. And, based on our quota, we have 2 athletes from track and field, Michelle Smith and Brandon Penmerton. And I actually competed with Brandon's father.
Okay.
And so they'll be going to Germany in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
In 3 weeks. Mid-July. And they'll be representing the Virgin Islands along with other federations at the World University Games, which people don't realize is like a mini Olympics, because everyone's there.
Now, for me with that, man, that's an important meet. But it's not limited to track and field.
No, that's what I'm saying. We have swimmers, we have a swimming crew, we have our fencer.
So Caden Gleason and Cruz. Cruz Chambry.
Yep. And so they'll be.
So that takes place in Germany.
That'll be in Germany.
And then the World Championships in Tokyo this year, right?
That is correct. We could talk about that after the break.
Yeah, well, that's about. Yeah. So we got the track and field Federation leadership and the Virgin Islands star, Michelle Smith, here in the studio. We'll take a break and be back right after this. living like a star. Living like a, yeah, so check this out, right? I had to reach for that because we got Michelle Smith, you know what I'm saying? Living like a star. He's from the Virgin Islands and all that stuff. How you to separate dad from coach?
As a coach father, when we're on the track, we talk track and we coach, and when we get home, we pretty much don't talk track too much. We, talk about what movie we want to watch, what we want to eat, and stuff like that. It doesn't come up as much when you're home because you switched off that section of your focus. And so, unless, the only times stuff come up is because as a coach, I'm mentally going through some things. And if something finally gets crystallized in my mind, I'm going to make sure to, write it down or tell the person at that point. But in order to keep that balance, because when we're coaching somebody, I prefer them to call me coach. And when we're home, they call me papa. So therefore, we switch that focus to a great extent and keep everything balanced. So it's not overwhelming, in terms of being, the same person in two different settings.
Now, Michelle, you are a Carifta legend. That goes. I'm not being. That's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating here. You I think you're undefeated in Carifta, correct?
My first year, I did do the 100 hurdles and I came second, but other than that, yeah, I'm undefeated.
As it relates to the 400 meter hurdles and the 800,
yeah,
I think you're undefeated.
Yeah.
Right? You raced in the under, what was it, under 16, under 20?
Under 17 and under 20.
Under 17. You raced in under 17 for how much years? 1 year or 2 years?
1 year.
1 year. And you took both golds.
Yeah.
That was in 2022, right? Somewhere around there?
Yes.
And then in 2023, you went to the under 20, and as a 17-year-old,
yeah,
right? You took gold in both 400 meter hurdles, 800 meter open.
Yeah.
And you took gold, according to the announcer, without paying any dues. Right? I just love the way,
Yes.
I love listening to the British and the foreign people talk, you know what I'm saying? Because they got such a great command of the language. That's 2023. You did it again in 2024.
Yeah.
Are you eligible to run in 2025?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
And you did it again?
Yeah.
So you did 3 years of dominating under 20.
Yes.
So you got banned from the competition because of your age,
yeah.
right? It's like, because you're going to be 20,
yeah.
right? In a little bit, right? So congratulations. So you got 8 Carifta gold medals.
Yes.
Wow. That's awesome. The next thing now is you ran the 4x4, which means that are you a 400 open runner now? Are you transitioning to that?
No.
Or you gonna focus on 800 and 400 hurdles?
Sure, yeah.
And that's gonna be for this year coming up.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you compete in those competitions this year at the NCAAs?
What do you mean?
400 meter hurdles.
Yeah.
And how'd you do?
I came third.
Came third. You got the bronze for that. What about 800?
I haven't competed.
You haven't competed that. But are you gonna do that?
Who
makes that decision? You, Dad, or the University of Georgia, or everybody sits down and
it's
decides
like
what's
a conversation with my coaches at UGA,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, I think my coach was trying to get me to do like a 600 indoors, but that never happened because I was focusing on the 400.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It would be a conversation with them.
Okay, good. Now, the Yankee twang that you got now, it's full now. I could hear it. You're singing good and all that stuff. Talk about you. What do you want to do as a person, not just a track star? What would you want for the younger girls when they're looking at the evolution of a Michelle Smith as a Virgin Islander, a Caribbean female athlete, student athlete? Are you embracing that notion that it isn't just about the fact that you were gifted and you're well coached and all that stuff? You want to actually, let your brain be a part of your evolution as well.
So yeah, definitely. I'm big on like education along with the track, because like track is helping me get a good education and get to where I want to be in the future. Because track is not like forever, but like you have the job, you have your like, skills. So like I'm trying to focus on working on my skills, like in education, and like I keep repeating the same stuff.
That's okay. That's okay.
But yeah.
You're 19.
Yes.
You'll be 20 in a little bit, right? Next month.
Next year.
Okay, so you just made 19 this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Last week. Okay. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? But you're still banned from Carifta.
Okay.
Because, well, not necessarily, right?
Yes.
Because if the tournament is, you only get 3 years.
It's in the year. Like what age you are that year.
No, but she makes 20 in June of next year. So that means she can't participate.
That is correct.
In Carifta, which is an April Easter type thing, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I'm happy for the competition because what you were doing to them was criminal, you know. But I love it. Congratulations in that regard, Coach and moms. How do you protect her from the vultures? They're out there.
That's a question that
I know sports.
We've discussed among ourselves, and what we have is a unit, a group. Her sister, her brothers, my wife, the coaches. We all conversate, and when there's anything that comes her way, she is always ready to bring it to us so that we have a discussion about it. The problem is when an athlete makes a decision on their own in a vacuum, they could easily make a bad decision. But when you have a community behind you, you have a group of individuals that are looking out for you. You have 10 minds that could actually say, hey, let's look into this, let's research it, let's make sure it's something that is worthwhile. So having a unit of support is what helps keep her from being, ravished in the real world.
The predators, keep the predators
that is
at a
correct.
distance. Moms, you want to chime in there?
No, it's exactly what he said. It takes a village. That's it. Michelle, do you have major?
A major?
You started on a major yet?
Yeah, biomedical physiology.
Ooh, that's what I'm talking about. I like that. So let's look at your schedule. The next meet is the World University Games, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you do over the next 3 weeks?
So I'm going back to Athens to train over there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like training and then preparing for that.
Okay, good. And then what's up after that? So what if you do so well at the World University Games time-wise that you qualify for the World Championships?
I actually already qualified.
You already qualified for that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. In what event?
400 hurdles.
400 hurdles. So you're going to Tokyo?
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. I'm with that. You know what I'm saying? That's a September deal, right?
Yeah.
So school had done start already.
Yeah.
So you got to do some juggling in terms of schoolwork and all that.
Yeah, so I started talking to my athletic counselor like when the outdoor season started. I was like, if I make it, this is gonna be happening. Mm-hmm. And then like the next week I made it and I was like, hey.
Any other UGA students qualify for the Tokyo Games?
I'm pretty sure our first leg, Dejanea Oakley from Jamaica qualified.
For the 400, 4x400,
no,
4x1? For
the 200.
Okay.
Or the 400, or both.
So you're talking about the first leg for the 4x4, the ladies 4x4.
Yeah.
Right? She is running in the 200 or the 400 for Jamaica?
I know she qualified for the 2, but she might have qualified for the 4.
Okay.
But I'm not too sure.
I think she qualified in the...
She ran a 49.
Yeah.
She's actually the fastest Jamaican right now.
For the 4?
In the 400.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. Anybody ever tell you that you're Usain Bolt look-alike, man?
Yes.
They mistake you. They mistake you all the time.
They don't mistake me, but they say I have a resemblance.
No, you do. Ain't no doubt about that. You do. So you come back from Tokyo, and the track and field season is over at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So you just focusing on getting that 4.0 for the fall semester.
Yeah.
And then it gets real hectic in the spring semester because you got the indoor season and then you were getting ready for the outdoor season for
Yeah.
next summer. All right. Now, 2026. That's a Central American and Caribbean Games year, right?
That is correct.
That's how the cycle goes.
Yes.
Olympics, World Championships, Central American and Caribbean Games, Pan Am Games and World Championships in the third year, and then the Olympics. That's how the
Yes.
cycle works, right?
But I think we missed the Pan Am Juniors in Paraguay. That's in August of this year as well. That's
Also-
before the
Also,
World
the Pan Am Juniors.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So
Yeah.
you go head down the toe.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. That's Paraguay. So that's a southern hemisphere. So when we're in the fall, they're in the spring
That
and
is
stuff
correct.
like that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Fall and spring is okay. It's when you're going from the summer
To the
the
winter.
winter and the winter to the summer. That's the issue there as well. Now you embrace VI ambassadorship. Talk about why that's so important.
Well, it's important to me because like I come from St. Croix. I grew up here like most of my life, and it's like awesome that I can like go out and represent our country or territory or whatever, and like just show that we're actually here. We're like on the map. Yeah.
You are literally
Literally.
a big fish in a small pond compared to being just another athlete from the United States of America.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's a distinction there. So I want you to embrace that. So the young lady from St. Lucia, she could scan.
Yeah.
That's,
Julian Alfred.
that's a term we used to use when we were growing up. He could scan. She could scan. She could hum. Is your daughter going to transition to at least the 200 meter because she got that kind of speed?
No.
No?
Not because
Because Usain Bolt was once a 400 meter runner, and then he transitioned to 1 and 2. That's the reason why I asked that question.
Well, I say no because it determines your body type and your body structure, and you look at us, we're
Lean. Yeah.
And so because she's most likely going to stay lean, she's going to stay in the events that she's most dominant in, which would be 400 meter hurdles, because Cindy McLaughlin-Laverne, she's 25 years old, Femme Cabal, she's like 24 years old. These are the top people in the industry, and they're aging out because you can only do that so long. I mean, they're not everybody's going to be like Delilah Muhammad, who's 33 and still competing. But I think she'll be dominant in that arena as time go on, because she's still young and she has to get, as the woman's strength, I would call it. And what is happening also is that we're looking at her progression right now, and she's right along the same lines of where Femme Cabal was, where Cindy McLaughlin was, Anna Cockrell. She's along those same lines, and therefore you say in 4 years she'll be doing what they're doing.
So LA is a big target year.
It's a big target year. I mean, I think that
When I say LA, I mean, for those of you listening, the 2028 Olympics are going to be held in Los Angeles.
and the way she continues to run, we pray that she'll make it to at least the semifinals, which would be a big accomplishment, being the top 16 in the world, because her
By
time
2028, you're talking
by
about.
2028, because right now her ranking is among the top 14 in the world, so that's huge. We're talking the world, 8 billion people, and she's top 20.
Cindy Coham.
Oh yes.
Cindy, and she went to Rio in 16, and she got humbled.
Yes,
right.
that's
And
correct.
then by the time the transition to Tokyo in 2021, and then last year in Paris, right? It was in Paris.
Yes, Paris.
Things happen. I want to congratulate all of you, not just for Michelle's evolution and as an athlete, but for the way you carry yourself. I think you need to be commended for that. I know, the route there and all that stuff. You're an NIL student.
Yeah.
Congratulations in that regard. You're down with Adidas?
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm a pro Adidas. A lot of people like Nike, but I was a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fan from Somaliland. He used to wear Adidas, so that's my thing, and all that good stuff. Focus on the education. What's it? Bio what?
Biomedical physiology.
Biomedical physiology. Can't even pronounce it good. And continued success. Good luck where in Germany is it?
It's actually going to be held in like 3 places in Germany.
Berlin is one of them?
Berlin is one.
No, it's,
Dusseldorf is the
Dusseldorf,
other.
yeah.
So it's in Rhine.
Rhine.
Traffic is
Okay,
in Rhine,
okay, good.
yeah.
And then Paraguay in August.
Paraguay in August.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yes,
That's awesome.
we
Then Tokyo
then
in September.
Tokyo, the big
Right.
show.
And then school in October, November, December, Athens.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? You feeling good?
Yeah.
Congratulations, man. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Your Yankee self.
We just want to encourage everyone to follow Michelle Smith
on this show.
VI.
And I actually played the 4x4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the audience appreciate that and all that stuff. Thanks for being here. Look, come back without your dad. Show me how you can rap and all that good stuff.
Most definitely. Thanks for having us.
Good to see you as well. And you be good, young lady. Thanks a lot, Kathleen Dowling as well. And our number 1, thank you to the Smith family. Good luck going forward. Be good and be safe. Talk to you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.